Welcome to Meeples on Meeples, Episode 1, a podcast where we discuss all things board game related. Go around and introduce ourselves.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Adam.
Brian.
And Patrick.
This week we're going to be discussing Tobago. Now, if you've been following us through our website, Facebook, or Twitter, you'll know that Tobago was our game of the week, where we encourage others to play along with us. Tobago is a game where you are on a treasured island, and there are up to 4 players, little Jeep pieces, and basically you're just rushing around trying to find as much treasure as possible and dig it up. During gameplay, each player will place a clue as to where you can find the treasure, and whoever's laid a clue that leads to that treasure will all get something in return. But the object is to get the most treasure, be the one to find it, etc., etc., etc.
Our goal of our podcast is kind of discuss how we play the game in our group. Some of the things we've experienced, things we've liked, things we haven't liked. So rather than give you a full in-depth review of the game, we're going to give you kind of the highlights, what we think are the best parts, the worst parts, and just some of our experiences while playing. Andrew had one issue that he wanted to talk about being the overall design of the game itself.
Well, not necessarily an issue. I think it's very simple and it's very great. And there are little tiny pieces that you actually set out when you're looking to find the treasure. It's nice because, as you can tell, I can move it from anywhere and it's clicked together pretty tightly so it doesn't move apart, which is nice because there's a lot of little pieces that could easily shift and move around and destroy your game in the middle of the game. So that's a very nice design.
One thing I liked about the design is that even though it's a very simple game, the pieces themselves are very well structured, very well designed. They have a lot of detail on them. They didn't have to do that with this game, but they did. I mean, they put a lot of detail work into a very, very simplistic game.
It's also nice that everything has its place, too. I mean, they have, like a lot of games, marks for where you're going to put the cards, but everything fits nicely. It's not like one of those games where everything's kind of trying to cram into a small spot or something. It all fits well on the board, everything has its place, and it doesn't get too complicated or too messy.
But at the same time, we talk about how simple it is, but it's very striking. I mean, the colors, the art style, it looks like an island with the rivers. You can tell where the forest is, the mountains. It's just a very good design. And every mountain space, if you look at it closely, they're not all painted identically. They didn't just copy and paste. It's actually, there's some
features.
Yeah, there's some artistic differences to it.
I mean, they put some time. There's like a little bit of artistic touch. It's not just, like I said, just repeated textures over and over, and that's pretty impressive.
And even the Jeeps themselves, I mean, they painted windshields on these things. I mean, they could have done what most games do.
Or Land Rovers.
Or Land Rovers, whatever you want to call them. But they could have just given you a die-cut piece without any paint on it, but they even went through the effort of painting on the Jeeps and giving you that amount of detail.
And the nice thing you'll see is it comes in actually a pretty small box, but it's a fairly big board. And instead of making it one of those boards that kind of folds out and can end up being uneven on the table, like Andrew said, it all sits very flat because it has these locking pieces on the side. It's actually 3 separate pieces of the board, and then these locking pieces hold it together to make it, lay flat on the table, but still fold up small and go into this rather small box.
Another thing we want to talk about is, I guess what we'd call flaws, or did we think there were any flaws to the gameplay?
Yeah, there was one situation where I had eliminated enough squares to have the treasure be found. And we knew exactly where it was, and Ian, who is not here right now, was already on that square, and we had to try and determine whether he could find it immediately. And what we had decided was that he could not find it because it was not his turn, and he disagreed.
It seems like, but we did a majority vote, kind of the house rule thing, and we all figured it should take an action to dig up the treasure, right?
Yes.
I mean, you should have to physically get out of his Jeep, dig it up, so that should be an action that you do on your turn.
It's not like he found the treasure and it just appeared on the land. It's actually buried is the idea behind the game. So
yeah, the card said, oh, it's there, but he still X marks the spot. He would have to do the work, right? So we made it go around, and of course, before he had a chance to get to it, I believe I swooped in and snatched up the treasure.
That's how that worked, actually.
And then it worked. That's why I voted. And it ticked him off, but it was kind of unclear, but we all agreed on playing it that way.
And I think to describe Ian's position, it was at the end of his turn when it was finally fully revealed. So his turn had just been completed, and we revealed that that's where the treasure was at the end of his turn. Now, he was out of actions by that point, and that's very important to say.
Actually, it was my turn when it was
person
revealed,
after
so it was right after his turn.
That's what he meant. I mean, it was right at the end of his turn. You revealed where the next card would be. I mean, he had no actions left, so in reality, it did make more sense that he couldn't just pick it up.
One of the other issues I think we came about, not necessarily a flaw, and it's kind of actually addressed by the game, is when you're laying down cards to find out where the treasure is, a lot of times you'll be able to lay a card down, but it's not going to necessarily narrow down where the treasure is. And initially when this came about, it was, you lay down a card and say it isn't on the biggest mountain, or it isn't on a mountain range. Well, then the next person tries to lay down a card saying it isn't on the biggest mountain range. Well, it's really kind of redundant and unnecessary because it's already not on a mountain range, so obviously it's not on the biggest mountain range. And we had some discussion about whether or not you should be allowed to put that down, because the benefit of putting down a card is that when the treasure is found, you get a chance at collecting more treasure. So we had kind of a discussion whether or not you should be able to gather.
I believe we did find. I think we dug that one out of the rule book, though, and I believe we did say you couldn't play a card
that contradicts another.
That contradicts. But I think there was something in there. I'd have to look again that said that you can't play a card that doesn't really do any good.
Yeah,
wording.
It was a discussion we had, and the rule book does get to it to a degree, saying that you can't do that type of thing. But that's one of the issues that came up to us that wasn't necessarily clear.
And we actually noticed it after it had already been done, and we'd found the treasure. And as we were going through, where he said, "Hey, wait a minute, this card totally doesn't make sense to be in this line," but it was already too late.
Yeah, at that point, the reason of doing that is you could pad your treasure. For every card you lay down when you find the treasure, you get a chance at one of the treasures when whoever finds it. And so you could pad your way to getting more and more treasure that way by just laying down useless card after useless card after useless card. So by the time you found it, you have 6 cards laid down.
And that kind of gets to another issue in this game. We talked about how simple and well it works, and how well designed it is. There's a lot of strategy to this game, even though it is relatively simple. And you can't just lay down cards like Pat was saying to try to pad your treasure. You need to be able to lay down cards that, 1, make sense, but 2, also benefit you somehow. You don't want to get all of your treasures or all your cards on one treasure.
One strategy I found is when you have that last card, and you're like, I could totally lay this card down, and it will narrow the treasure way over here, but I'm parked over here in my Jeep, and I don't have a token to give me the extra moves. That's what the tokens do in this game. They give you another turn, basically, essentially. So it's like, do I hold on to this and move over there and then play it the next turn, or what if somebody else plays a card that narrows it down to somebody else, and then I just wasted all that movement? And so you do have to kind of think about, do I play this card now, or do I hold on to it? Do I want to use the token now, or should I hold back because the tokens are also used to get rid of a curse? I might need that later. So, you do have to put some thought into what you do.
And those curses bring up another strategy. As you go through the game, how many curses are there?
2 curses.
There's 2 curses, and what the curse means is when you dig up a treasure, you randomly get dealt out the number of treasure cards to how many cards you laid down for that treasure. Plus 1 extra that nobody knows about. They all get mixed together, and then you flip them out randomly. Well, as you get to the end of the game, curses are eventually going to start coming because they're near the bottom of the deck. The biggest thing, as far as strategy goes, then, is when you're getting low and you haven't found a curse yet in the game, is do you start claiming every treasure that's dealt out just to make sure you don't get the curse?
No matter how small it is,
no matter how small it is, or do you risk it, wait for the big treasures, and then if the curse comes up, lose everything?
The only other, I mean, it's definitely not a flaw game. It's very popular if you look on Board Game Geek. We all, I think, agree that we liked it a lot. But I say a flaw is it's only 4-player at the most, right. And we're usually a 5-player gaming group every Saturday. So sometimes getting it to hit the table can be kind of hard. It doesn't seem like it should be too terribly difficult to make it a 5-player game. I don't know why there's no expansion yet. But
I don't see why it's a 4-player limitation. I mean, I don't think we've ever hit a time where the number of player pieces on the board was an issue for size. I think the size of it's just fine, especially because you're so limited in how you move across the board. I mean, you can't go very far.
Yeah.
I think the limit is more the treasures themselves. I think it's the amount of treasures that, with 5, you burn through the deck.
The actual card itself, you only have so many. So if there was
and they probably have to tweak it, maybe throw in another curse. I mean, but like I said, the designer should go back, because it's been out long enough now that, for crying out loud, put out an expansion and somehow make it 5-player. I mean, maybe the expansion just includes like the extra Jeep, a few extra cards, and a new way to assemble the map or something. But I would really love to see this 5-player, because it's a good family game, and why couldn't you have a family of 5 playing it?
I was going to jump in on that idea. I mean, one of the great benefits of this game is that it is a family game. It is rated for 10 and up. I even think that you could go lower than that if you had time to explain it to them and things like that. It is a fairly simple game.
But don't you think that you'd have to help the younger
ones?
You'd
have to help the younger ones.
Because they'd be looking at that, okay, it's I know it's not within 2 of a tree, so can I play this card that says it's next to?
But that's a teaching part, though. That's you can.
I was gonna say
teach strategy.
I almost think 10 might be a little young for some people too. I mean, it depends on the 10-year-old you're dealing with, but I think that you might have some, 10, 12, even 14-year-olds that we have some of these treasure chains that get so long that you have to go through all of them and try to make sure your card works in there and doesn't get. So I could see it being I could see 10 being actually low.
Well, I'm just saying that with a family game, I mean, I would have no problem sitting down. I have children, obviously 4 is too old, but my 8-year-old, my 12-year-old, my 14-year-old, obviously. I mean, I'd have to coach my 8-year-old a little bit, but that's teaching them that strategy part, that thought process. And I think that this game is great in those teachable moments. And I think it opens to a group of players. Now,
well, kids are certainly going to want to play it. I mean, as soon as they see that I don't know what this is made out of, but it feels like stone. I mean, as soon as they see these pieces, they're going to be drawn to this. It's like a toy. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a harder plastic that they're made out of. Almost all the pieces. I mean, even the trees and everything. Actually,
I think they're wood.
I don't know. I don't know. But they're very well constructed and they're very nice
nicely.
Good design, a lot of detail to it.
Well, what do you guys think about older groups, though? I mean, is this going to hit the table for a lot of hardcore gamers? I mean, it's a fairly light.
I don't see why not. It has a lot of playability. I know we've played it twice in one night.
Yeah, we'll play it back to back, no problem.
Yeah,
I think part of what gets it in with a hardcore gaming crowd too is the fact that it is so quick. I mean, it says 60 minutes. I know we finished it in less than that before. Mm-hmm. So you can, our typical game night's 3 to 4 hours at the most. We can get this in and then get into a more complicated game, down the line, and Manhattan Project, for instance.
Yeah, don't even go there. No, we will not.
But I think that's one of the benefits to it is you can have a hardcore gaming crowd that maybe wants to start with something light and then get into something a little more complicated, or do a big game first and then finish off with kind of a lighthearted, treasure hunt.
Yeah, after we got time for one more game, we don't want to end yet, so throw this. I mean, I think it's probably hit the table. 4 different gaming nights, and we played a couple times each. I mean, I assume probably played about 10 games, give or take, overall. Right. And it's just only because we have 5 players most of the time. Otherwise, I think we probably would play it more.
The one thing going real quick on gameplay, there's one part that we keep forgetting to do, and that is the turning of the statues. That's what draws tokens wash up onto the shore of the island based upon the turning of the statues. And there's a certain point in the gameplay where the statues turn, pointing to a different direction, drawing those tokens up. And we have a tendency to forget to do that.
You kind of get wrapped up in the game. Every time you find a treasure, everyone's kind of getting wrapped up in, I want the biggest treasure and kind of jockeying for their position. And then we move on pretty quick, putting down a new treasure card for that treasure that was found, and kind of get caught up in the moment and forget to spin the statue. So that's kind of an issue.
Otherwise, should we kind of maybe give our final thoughts, or is anything else that we need to add to this?
I think we've covered most of the basis on, it plays well. It's very eye-appealing. I mean, it just draws you right into the table. I mean, it doesn't make you stare out into space at all. So.
Actually, I do. Quick, funny little anecdote. Remember when we first opened the game?
Oh, yeah.
And, we'll shake all the pieces. I'll have here to demonstrate for the viewers watching. They come folded up like this. When we first took it out of the box, they were compact and tight together. I mean, it's so skinny. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is durable, but it's very skinny. It looks like one piece. So as we pulled it out, we're like, how does this fit together? And we 3 of us, okay, not just me, 3 of us were like,
I wasn't there.
You weren't there.
We're trying to put this together into a board. And it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And then finally, all of a sudden, somebody's like, ugh, and if you can hear it go, and it's like, oh, look at that. I was freaking out. I thought I lost, it came missing pieces because I just cracked it open. So that was kind of, so if those of you who buy it, they open up.
It's also why you may want to take everything we say with a grain of salt.
Should we do a scale 1 to 10, do you think?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Andrew, you want to kick it off?
I would give it an 8. I really enjoy playing it. It's a lot of fun. It's, a quick moving game, but there's a lot of table talk too. Like, don't get over there. That's my treasure. Can't believe you laid that, because my card and my turn was going to eliminate all this stuff, and it's just super fun, and it can get kind of loud and exciting, so I'd definitely give it an 8.
I'd agree with Andrew. I'd actually go a little higher. This is probably one of my favorite games. I put it actually at a 9.
Wow.
I think it's a lot of fun. Like you said, we've requested it many times, and we've played a lot of games in the, about 6 months we've been doing this. And
pretty much if I know it's going to be a 4-person night, I just bring Tobago.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, Tobago should be on the table.
And that's kind of the frustrating part, again, going back to it only being 4 players, is that I would actually like to play it more often with a 5-player group, since our group is 5 players. But I would put it at a 9 just because the construction, all the pieces, everything is so well done. It's so simple, yet it involves a lot of strategy, and it can really be an in-depth game, even though, like we said, it is such a simple design, a simple idea.